hell or high water.
Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner.
Nehemiah chapter 4, look at verse 6. So we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. My God, what things can happen for you when the people have a mind to work. If everybody in your house, if everybody on the job has a mind to work, my God, what can happen? And now it happened that when Sanballat and Tobiah, the Arabs and Ammonites and the Ashdodites, heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored and that the gaps were beginning to be closed, that they became very angry. And all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Now, you know God is not the author of confusion, but the God of peace. So you know who is behind this. Nevertheless, we made our prayer to our God. And because of them, we set a watch against them day and night. And then Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing, and there is so much rubbish that we are not able to build the wall. And our adversaries said, they will neither know nor see anything till we come into their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. And so it was that when the Jews who dwelt near them came, that they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. Therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall, at the openings, and I set the people according to their families, with their swords and spears and their bows, and I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us, and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work. And so it was that from that time on, that half of my servants worked at construction, while the other half held the spears, the shields, the bows, and wore armor. And the leaders were behind all the house of Judah. And those who built on the wall, and those who carried burdens, loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked at construction, and with the other they held a weapon. As you are rebuilding a wall, this is automatically letting us know that you're going to deal with demonic opposition. That Satan is going to come and try to undermine everything that you try to put in your children. Everything that you've labored for in marrying a spouse. He's going to try to uproot the very foundations and tear down what you have tried to labor, the very things that you have prayed for. But somebody say with me, the devil is a lie. How many of y'all believe, you know, that you have worked too hard, you have prayed too hard, you've believed too hard, you've got too much time invested now to let everything that you've worked for, even though there come attacks against you, to let it all be for naught? And so we have to set out as we are on our destiny. There are different things that will happen when you're on your journey in your destiny. You know, your car will sometimes break down. You make a wrong turn. There may be road conditions that will cause a delay or detour. You could be carjacked. Somebody could be traveling that may get sick, or you may get sick yourself. You may remember that you lost something or left something at your last stop. You may get sleepy on the journey. Your back will get uncomfortable. Passengers will begin to complain. People will be just like little children. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? You could run out of gas. You know, you could have mechanical failure where the air conditioning gives out, the heat fails. And so here Nehemiah was halfway on the journey, halfway to the completion of this destiny of building this wall, rebuilding the foundation here in Jerusalem, but he wasn't halfway through his problems. And so he was dealing with something. And so I want you to realize that it is totally natural. It's totally natural for you to want to turn back when you begin to have trouble on your journey. See, the temptation is to quit and then to find something to relieve the pain of failure. But whenever you start having trouble, our first instinct is to want to go back to the very thing that we were familiar with at one time. I mean, if you think about that over in Numbers chapter 11, verse 4, now the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense cravings. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now our whole being is dried up and there's nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. People out there complaining about the food that God provided. Isn't it something? Now, people are complaining about stuff that you give them. Now, you know if they complain about what God provided for them, how much more will they complain about? You know, when people complain, it's really not a reflection of who you are, it's a reflection of who they are. So it had nothing to do with God or anything that God was doing. You remember there's sometimes that, like it's noted in the 19th chapter of Genesis, I call it the Lot syndrome. It's where we go back because we love it a lot. I call it the Lot syndrome, where you want to go back like Lot's wife did. She looked back. And let me tell you, when you really read the text carefully, you notice the Bible says she looked back from behind him. She never was with him. She looked back from behind. It wasn't that she just was with Lot and then turned and looked back. She looked back from behind him because her heart was still back there. And you'll find yourself lingering wherever your heart is. Doesn't matter where your body is, it matters where your heart is. And if your heart is still back at another place, because you've been looking back there, you always move in the direction in which you look. So if you're looking back to how good it was back there, if you're still looking back to the times with your ex, and I know people that get in trouble in their relationship because they keep looking back at an ex. I know a lady that got in trouble because she went back to her college ex. Just hook up, for a season. Looking back brought destruction to her current relationship. But isn't it amazing how after they got halfway out, half of them got saved and the other half got destroyed? Remember, we were talking about 6 people here. Lot and his 2 daughters, those 3 got saved. But Lot's wife and his 2 sons-in-laws, those 3 got lost. All of them heard the same message and the same warning. 3 were saved and 3 were lost. Isn't that interesting? That half of them got out and half of them didn't. After you've heard the truth and then you go back to business as usual, you die. Let me say that again. After you hear the truth and then if you go back to business as usual, you'll end up dying. And that's what happened to them. They heard the truth and they went back to business as usual and they died. They did not change when they were confronted with truth. Truth brings the conviction necessary for change. Truth brings the conviction necessary for change. And so there are various things that really honestly help us in wherever we are. If people, as they become discouraged, I want you to realize how the devil fights us. I want you to realize how he fights us. After you've gotten halfway into something, let me point out to you that he fights us through, number 1, fatigue. You can get just tired, and being tired makes a coward out of most people. They just say, well, go on, let them have it. I don't feel like it. You just almost take an attitude like whatever when you get tired. If you get tired enough. So you have to be careful whether you are physically tired or emotionally tired. Fatigue. This often happens when you're halfway through a major project and you get tired. Because whenever you're tired, you have a tendency to lean more toward the problem than you do toward the solution. Here's what fatigue does. Fatigue robs you of energy, it robs you of creativity, and it also robs you of discernment. Whenever you get tired, it robs you of energy, it robs you of creativity, and it robs you of discernment. May I help you to understand here that you were made in the image of a creative God. All of us are creative people because we were made in the image of a creator God. And so we have to be creative because we have come out of the creativity of God. Our DNA has creativity in it. Did you know that they've taken a survey and people 35 years old, they found only 2% of them were creative. Out of 7-year-olds, they found out 10% of them were creative. Out of 5-year-olds, they found out 80% of them were creative. I wonder what happened. See, really to tell the truth, up to the point that they were 5, 100% of them were creative. And they went to school, and the school started telling them color within the lines. Come into conformity. And it stripped away their personal creativity. We were made as creative beings. But by the time they enter into school, only about 80% of them are creative. And 2 years later, after they've been in the system, their creativity has been so narrowed down to conformity that they have stopped them from expressing how they see the world. Little kids, when they are 4 years old, they don't necessarily see a tree as having a brown base and then green foliage at the top. It might be purple. The tree trunk might be blue-green. You know, they see things differently in their world. It is how they perceive it. It is their creativity. And so when you get involved with problems in the world, what you need to then draw on is a creative spirit that God made us in. He gave us a creative spirit. We are made in the image of a creator God. But when you become fatigued, your creativity doesn't work. If you get tired, it's hard to be creative when you're worn out. You can't decorate something if your energy is sapped and your mind is, you're emotionally fatigued. Well, you just can't handle it because other people have been draining and telling you their problem. It saps your creative energy. So if he can get us fatigued, if he can get you fatigued, he can take away your creativity. And in your creativity is your ability to solve problems. Every time that the world comes in crisis, what we need to tap into is greater creativity. You'd be surprised, answers come out of creativity. They come out of creativity. And so it was Steve Jobs that said this, that you don't ask the people what they want and then think that you build it, because he says by the time you build it, he said they will want something new. So you have to figure out something using your own creativity of what they're like and let them come there and experience it. Are you listening? But you really want, let me just tell you that people that make great money, they have creative spirits. They create something, a service or product. They create something out of their creativity. Their gift of creativity, your gift will make room for you. It's out of your creativity. Problems are solved out of your creativity. You'd be surprised how many great solutions have come into our world because somebody got creative. See, I just want you to start thinking in a different dimension, but you can't think creatively like that when your mind is stressed out with fatigue, when you're just worn out. And the devil wears us out because we got to get up in the morning. We're trying to get up and get ready and get out and rush. Just hurry up and wait. You see me sit up in traffic. And our creativity is being sapped out of us because, we're pulling up on them like, you're not getting in front of me, not this morning. Nobody. You're going to have to wait like the rest of us. When you've been standing in line and then somebody comes down another side lane and then got their blinker on trying to get in front of you. And we act like we have on blinders. Like we can't even see them. We develop tunnel vision at that time. I want you to stir up your creativity, but you've got to guard yourself against fatigue. It's one of the greatest things that I saw my dad do. My dad, when he would get fatigued, he said the only thing you can do right when you're tired is rest. Because when you get tired, your tolerance decreases. You're liable to start snapping on folks. My mother would sometimes look at my dad and she said, you need to go out of town. You get tired. And you're not as creative. There have been times when I've been trying to write and I realized that my mind was fatigued. I'll just put it up. Because when I get in a creative flow, I can create. But if I become fatigued, I get writer's block. But if you ever, you have to guard yourself against that. And that's why Jesus had to go apart and rest a while. He had to pull away from people. People can drain your energy. They see you, then they'll bring you a problem, and then they'll be asking you for money, and then they'll be doing this and that and the other, and you just get sapped. And you've used all of your energy to help solve other people's problems, and now you don't have any creative energy to deal with what's your responsibility. So you have to guard yourself against fatigue. You have to guard yourself against fatigue. Secondly, when you're dealing with things, you want to guard yourself against frustration. Frustration. If you ever get frustrated, my goodness, because see, unfinished tasks can get you frustrated. Or unexpected interruptions, they cause frustrations. Or when things don't meet your expectations, and then you get frustrated. You'll be surprised of how much delay causes frustration. Have you ever had something and they told you that it was going to be ready at a certain time, and then you go to pick it up and it's not ready? That feeling that you feel is called frustration. It's frustration. You know, when you put in an application and they tell you, well, we'll call you by Friday. And Friday comes and they haven't called you. That feeling is called frustration. So if it gets us frustrated, again, that messes with your creativity. So you have to really guard yourself, because if you get frustrated too long, you will become discouraged. Fatigue will do it. Frustration will do it. Frustration will do it. So you have to always guard yourself against frustration. The third thing that he uses that really messes us up is failure. Because something that we were working on, that we were trying to do and get across, and it didn't work, and the failure of that thing just knocks the wind out of us. Just failure. It knocks the wind out of it, because you tried something and it did not work. You tried something and it did not work, and failure just, pow, it just knocks the wind out. You thought that this one was going to be the one. You were hyped up about it, and then you have a failure. It knocks the wind out of you. It gets you discouraged. You know, when your plans fall apart and your deals falls through and the contract is not signed and the loan is not approved, you know, that's what you start feeling stuff that messes with you. It's trying to interrupt you from being able to complete what God has given you to do. And that becomes terribly discouraging if a relationship fails. So you have to be very careful about things that fail. But remember this, that success is not permanent, and failure is not fatal. It is not fatal. That's why the sun goes down every night and rises every morning, to let you know, here's a chance, here's a clean sheet of paper. Live your dream today. All of the failure, I don't care what happened to you in your past. Yesterday could have been the worst day of your life. You could have received terrible news. But here's the good news. Yesterday ended at midnight. It ended at midnight. God closed that chapter. It ended at midnight. And so you have to compartmentalize your life in various chapters so you can close off failure that is already behind you. The moment that you experience a failure, immediately it is in the past. May I give you some good news? All of your failure is history. It's old news now. It is history. It's history. It is history. It's history. You see, anything that registers as news, say news. The thing that makes things news is that it is new. If it is no longer new, it's not news. You know how somebody might have been out of the loop, and then things that you've known about for a long time, and then they say, oh, that's old news. In other words, that's not news anymore. Everybody knows that. News has to always be new. That's why they always want to come in, put it on the bottom of the screen, breaking news. Happening right now, showing it live in action right now. It has to be breaking. Why can't they show something that's going to happen? and be prognosticators. It grabs our attention. You can be doing something. If it's a pre-recorded show, we don't pay it as much of attention as we do breaking news. And don't let them interrupt our program with so-called breaking news. But that's the thing, that's the appeal of news, is that it always has to be new. But if the devil can get us when you are trying to build, think of these things in terms of building your family, or building your own spiritual life, or building your business. Think of this, how he uses fatigue. You get awfully tired working in your own business. You get tired trying to build your family, trying to, work on raising godly children and trying to nurture your spousal relationship. You experience frustration. You will experience failure. And the fourth thing that you experience is fear. Just fear. I mean, the fear of failure, the fear of criticism, the fear of responsibility, the fear of the unknown, various things that could happen. Just fear. But there are various things that are common elements in the lives of people who succeed. So when I'm looking at rebuilding something, I want to look at what I consider to be the common elements, some common elements of success in rebuilding something that has been torn down, broken down. Nehemiah is a classic example of rebuilding a wall around a city. And notice they had a tool in one hand. The tool is for construction, say construction. And the weapon in another hand, say protection. They are dealing with construction and protection. You don't need to protect anything unless you're building something. But whatever you build will need protection. Whatever you build, if you're building children, it will need protection. If you're building a business, it will need protection. If you build a house, it will need protection. Whatever you build needs protection. And listen, whatever you are willing to build, you empower to grow. Are you listening? If you're willing to build your business, you are empowering that thing to grow. If you're willing to build your children, you're empowering them to grow. Whatever you are willing to build, you are empowering that thing to grow. If you're willing to build your mind, build your spirit, you are empowering that thing to grow. And so whatever you build, you have to protect, because there is worth and value in anything that we build. In anything that we build. You'd be surprised how oftentimes you get out of school and sometimes the tables flip. A students shine while they're in school. But when you get out of school, oftentimes B students are the managers of A students. And so B students are working in a place in management, and they're actually supervising A students. And the B student is managing in a place that the C student owns a building. Did you know that most successful businessmen were actually C students? My daddy that became a multimillionaire was a C student. Isn't that interesting? You'd be surprised, and you know some of the others that I could call out who dropped out of school and are billionaires now. They were C students, and now they own the building and are hiring teachers to work for them. How interesting. It's just interesting. But I want to look at some areas. Are you interested in knowing some success areas that people, in terms of building the wall? Because Nehemiah was at this place where they had built the wall half up. You got the thing half up, but it's not secured yet because it's only half done. Have you ever gotten part of the way on your journey where you got all your plans? You've got the education, you've got this, you've got that, you've got the other, but there's another distance that you've got to go. You got part of it, but now you're actually vulnerable because you've got something invested in it, but it's not finished yet, and you're trying to work with this thing. There are common elements that you can learn, that you even learn from the previous things that you've been successful with.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.